Hello, everyone. Okay, so we'll continue with Negotiable Instruments Act. So last class we started with Negotiable Instruments Act and two different types of instruments. So we will continue with that part. So Negotiable Instruments Act is of the year 1881, and before this act came into force, we were having the English laws, right? That used to govern us as well. We used to follow that as well. And then finally, after a lot of drafting and redrafting, this act came into force in 1881. So this was the history that you can read from the document that I have shared. From there also, you can read the history that what happened, how like drafting and redrafting and this entire process went on. And finally, we have the Negotiable Instruments Act. Then regarding sections, we have 147 sections divided into 17 chapters. So these are the different topics that it covers that we saw in last class as well. But again, all these different sections are not important, like a specific relief or like contracts, right? All these sections are not important. Whatever is important from where questions are coming, we are going to cover that part because this act is also relevant for bank exams and all. For judiciary, all the sections are not important. Whatever is relevant, we will discuss those provisions in detail. Then we have these two different dates which are important: when it was enacted, when it came into force, and then we have the three different types of negotiable instruments. So it is section 13 that defines what negotiable instruments is. And basically there are three different types of instruments that this NI Act deals with. So section 13, try to remember, section 4, 5 and 6 talks about three different types of instruments which we have. So what is negotiable instruments? It means some sort of a transferable written document, a written document which we can transfer to another person as well. So how many times can we transfer a negotiable instruments? Any limitation on that regarding transferability of a negotiable instrument?
I think n number of times.
It is n number of times until the date of maturity arrives. So we can transfer it n number of times. And how we will transfer? We can transfer it by endorsement or we can transfer it by delivery as well. So these are the two ways how we can transfer it. So this is basically useful when with regard to business transactions and all, right? That right now I don't have enough money to invest on my business, but I still want to buy some goods for my business, some items for my business. So what I can do is that I can make a promise that later on, when I have enough money, I will make the payment. So based on that promise, I can still get those goods and items which I want for my business, right? So for those matters, negotiable instruments are very useful, right? That it can be used in order to make use of the time, right? That right now I don't have money, but still I can invest on my business. So same thing may happen even in case of checks. You would see for companies and all, they would deal with checks only. If take for example, you want to make a certain payment to a person, like you would take some sort of a service from a person, you can give a check beforehand only. Before doing the thing or before getting the service only, you are making the payment. Like that also you can do with regard to check. So with those matters, these instruments help us a lot. So these were some of the features of negotiable instruments in general, which should apply to all these three different types of instruments. So can we consider currency notes as a type of negotiable instruments? Will NI Act be applicable?
No, ma'am, it doesn't applicable, ma'am. Even that the currency, it has some, as per currency act, something, some act is there, ma'am, for that.
Yeah. So Indian Currency Act is there. So it is not covered under Negotiable Instrument Act, even though there is a promise, right? There is a promise that I promise to pay the bearer this much amount of rupees. But even though there is a promise, it is given to another person, it is not covered under the NI Act. So regarding applicability, it is applicable to entire India. It's mainly applicable to these three different types of instruments which we have. But apart from this, there may be certain type of customary instruments as well. So what are customary instruments? Anyone remembers, or what are hundis? Customary instrument. Anyone remembers regarding its applicability? So what are customary instruments? It's same only, right? Like how we have custom, right? That something was followed from generation or since time immemorial, we are still following it. So same, there may be certain instrument which are what? Which are customary instrument that from a very long time, people from a certain community or a certain state are following that particular instrument for their transactions. But for that, maybe they do not have any set defined law, right? Like how we have NI Act. Maybe they do not have a legislation, but it is something which they are following from time immemorial and they are continuing with that. So regarding those types of customary instruments also, NI Act may be applicable. When parties are reading that, okay, fine, we are using this customary instrument and we do not have a defined law, so we will be governed by the NI Act. In that case, we can apply. Or in case their customary laws are silent regarding how they will settle a certain matter. In that case also, we can apply the provisions of NI Act again. And hundi is also a type of customary instrument for which you would get different like samples also in Reserve Bank of India website. And this is one of those samples only, where in in their like local language they would write the matter, how much is pending and all of that. So under this legislation, we have three different types of instruments for which we have proper definition, proper provisions and everything. And first one is promissory note, where one person will make a promise to pay a certain amount to the other person. It is under section 4. And under section 5 we have, so this was the sample of a promissory note, that the person will make a promise that I will pay this much amount of money to this other person. There are these features also that bills of exchange is defined under section 5. So what were the main differences, or like what is a bills of exchange? Anyone remembers what bills of exchange and promissory notes are? Promissory notes and bills of exchange, what are the differences between these two instruments?
And promissory note defined under section 4 of NI Act.
Yeah.
And bills of exchange is defined under section 5 of NI Act. And promissory note is an instrument in writing containing unconditional undertakings, ma'am.
Yeah, unconditional undertaking. What is unconditional undertaking?
There are no conditions applied, ma'am.
There are no conditions applied, and I'm only saying that I will make the payment. Like in affidavit, we have an undertaking, right? So same thing applies here also. I'm only saying that I will make this payment without any conditions. I will not say that only in case I make a certain profit, only in case I have this thing, that thing, nothing like that. Without any conditions, I will make this payment. So it is unconditional promise. But in case of bills of exchange, what happens is that it is what it is. The other person will direct, right, that you need to give me this much amount of money. So 60 days after this date, pay this much amount of rupees to this person for value received, for whatever service or goods you have received. As a consideration for that, you need to make a payment of 2 lakhs rupees, 50,000 rupees, or whatever the amount may be. Now, because bills of exchange is someone else's direction or someone else's order, we need to accept it. If I'm only saying that I will pay you 20,000 rupees, I don't need to accept it, right? I'm only making the promise. So in promissory notes, there is no concept of acceptance. But in case of bills of exchange, because someone else is giving us an order, someone else is giving us a direction, we need to accept that particular order. Only when it is accepted, it will be considered as valid. Otherwise, I may just make bills of exchange in name of any person, right? I may give directions that pay me this much amount, pay me that much amount. But those will not be valid unless and until it is accepted by the other person. So these are some of the differences that you can read. It will just help you understand the differences in a better way. There are some questions also from previous year papers that we discussed, and now we have check under section 6. So can anyone tell how, like, you know, right, what is promissory note, what is bills of exchange? So can you tell what are checks or how is it different from promissory note or bills of exchange? So if you read the first line, check is what? Check is a form of bills of exchange only. So how is it different from the other types of bills of exchange? Anyone? Can anyone tell? How are checks different from other types of bills of exchange that we have? See, in case of normal bills of exchange, what happens? Take for example that one example we had, right? Previous one example. Same thing only we can take. Okay, now take for example, A bought 10 laptops of 50,000 each on credit from another person B. Now, who will issue this bills of exchange? It will be B, right? B will issue a bills of exchange that after 1 month, after 2 months, after 3 months, or whatever the time is, you need to pay me 5 lakhs rupees. Or he may mention a date as well, that on 1st of December 2020, pay me 5 lakhs rupees. In that case, what happens? It is this other person, right? The creditor only, who is issuing the bill, that you need to make this amount of payment to me on so and so date. And accordingly, it will be accepted by the debtor also, and it will be a valid bills of exchange. Now, check is what? Check is also a type of bills of exchange. So how is it different from the regular bills of exchange then?
Ma'am, bills of exchange is basically an order, ma'am.
Bills of exchange is an order.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think check is not like order, ma'am, but it's a demand which is said to be paid certain amount of money.
Okay, so in case of check, there is also, yes, right, that there is demand also. In case of bills of exchange also, sometimes there may be demand also, right? That if I am mentioning a date that on 10th of December, you pay me the amount, you need to pay it to me on that day itself. It's your responsibility. But sometimes I may not mention a date. I may just mention that whenever this bills of exchange is produced before you, you need to pay me the amount. So in that case, in a way, we can say that I am going to you and I am, like demanding the money, showing the bills of exchange. There may be some amount of demand in there also, but the main point of difference is with regard to this order. In case of regular bills of exchange also there is order. In case of check also there is order. but to whom this order is given, right? That there is a difference. So check is what? It is a form of bills of exchange drawn on a specified bank and is payable only on demand. Unless and until the person is going to the bank and submitting his check and demanding the money, no one is going to pay him, right? Even though a time frame is fixed that it is valid for 3 months only. If I'm not going to the bank and depositing that check within 3 months time frame, no one is going to pay me, even though a time frame is mentioned. So it is payable only on demand. That thing you can remember. Hence, check contains an unconditional order. Unconditional order, but order is given to whom? This order is given to the bank. If I have an account in HDFC Bank, I will give the order to my HDFC Bank that if this particular check is deposited by this person, you need to release a payment of 20,000 rupees, 50,000 rupees, or whatever the case may be. So this order is here also, but this order is given to the bank. But in case of regular bills of exchange, order is given to the debtor that you need to pay me 50,000 rupees. So I order you that on 10th of December, you pay me this amount of 10,000 rupees. But in case of check, this order is given to the bank where I have my account. So what is check? It contains an unconditional order containing signature of the drawer or maker of the check. If I am issuing this check, I will make this unconditional order. To whom? To my bank, HDFC Bank. I will make this order. How? I will put my signature as well to authenticate the check, and then I will make this check. Given to bank to pay a certain sum of money on demand. Again, if I'm writing someone's name, I have mentioned the amount as 50,000 rupees, date and all I have mentioned, I have put my signature, but what happens is that it will be valid for 3 months time only, and accordingly the person can claim the money. How? By demand. He can deposit the check in the bank and then bank will accordingly clear it, release the payment. So this order is unconditional order and it is given to the bank that if check is deposited, you need to release the amount. There is no other conditions attached to this particular check. And it includes electronic image of a truncated check and a check in electronic form. So we will get these different types of checks in a while. So we will discuss what these different types of checks are. Basically, you can remember this part that check is also a type of bills of exchange. How is it different? Here, order is given to the bank that if this check is deposited, if someone is demanding the money, you need to release this amount without any conditions. And it will include truncated check and check in electronic form as well. So in the definition itself, they have mentioned that it will include truncated check and electronic check as well. So if there is a dispute with regard to check in an electronic form which is issued to a person, in that case also the matter will be under NI Act only, right? The matter will be accordingly solved. So only they have clearly mentioned these two different types are also included under it.
Ma'am, what is truncated check, ma'am?
Yeah, we are getting the definition part. So I will explain that. Like different types of checks we are getting in a while. Truncated check, electronic check, and all of that. It's like basically a scanned copy of a regular check that we have. So this is an example of check where there will be this check number and all also. So even if you are issuing a check to a certain person, right? It is what? It is unconditional order is given to the bank. Now take for example, you have already issued a check in name of a certain person, okay? Take for example, you wanted to take a certain service from A, and accordingly you made an advance payment of 30,000 rupees. Not like payment, you issued a check in name of that person, amount is 30,000 rupees. But later on, after issuing the check, what happens is that this person did not provide you the service, or that agreement was broken. In that case, what you can do, you can even request this bank to cancel this particular check. You can mention the check number and you can request your bank that I issued this particular check. In case it is deposited, do not clear it. So you can even make a request like that. In case you have already issued a check and then something goes wrong, you don't want your bank to release the payment, you can accordingly do that as well. Now there are three parties involved in a check. In case of promissory note, how many parties are there?
Two parties.
Two parties. So one will make the promise and other one will accordingly get the payment. In case of bills of exchange, how many parties are there?
Three parties.
It can be three parties, or sometimes it may be just two parties also. I am directing you that you make a payment of 20,000 rupees to me on 10th of December. There will be two parties. But if I'm saying that I want you to make a payment of 20,000 rupees to this other person C, because I also need to pay him 20,000 rupees, and like you need to pay me 20,000 rupees. So just to make all these two transactions get done in one, I may also ask you that for this particular service that you have taken from me, rather than paying me, you pay this amount to this other person. So there can be three parties in case of bills of exchange, and in case of check also there will be three parties. Who all are the parties? The drawer, who will make the check or who will issue the check. So if I have an account in HDFC Bank and I am issuing this particular check, I will be the drawer who is making or issuing the check. Drawee will be the bank. HDFC Bank in this case will be the drawee, and payee will be the person whose name I will write in the check. So it may be in whose name check is issued. I can write someone's name also, right? I may write someone's name. I may write Neha, I may write Mamta. Whoever's name I would write, that person will be the payee. Or what I can do is that it may be the bearer also. So if you see here, it says what? Pay. Gap is there. You can write someone's name. If you are writing someone's name, the payment, that person will get the payment, or bearer. If I am not writing anyone's name, then it will be what? Pay to the bearer. As in whoever is carrying that particular check and depositing it in the bank, that person will get the payment. So I may not write anyone's name, but the person can go and claim as a bearer. So whoever will get the payment, that person is payee. There are basically three parties involved in a check as well. So this is check, drawer, drawee, and payee. So we know, right, that negotiable instruments can be negotiated. It can be transferred n number of times, right? It can be negotiated by way of endorsement, or it may be negotiated by way of delivery in case no one's name is written in the instrument. So when a check is endorsed, if you have issued a check to me, okay? If, take for example, you have an account in HDFC Bank and this is a check that you have written my name over here. So you have written Meenakshi over here, some amount, you have put your signature, date, and everything. In that case, I have the option of negotiating it, right? I can transfer it to someone else. Now, if you have already written my name, how will I transfer? I will transfer by way of endorsement. What I will do, on the back side of the check, I will write someone else's name. I will put my signature, and accordingly it may be negotiated, or I may just put my signature and give it to another person. It will accordingly get transferred. So when a check is transferred, what happens? There are these parties, holder. So if a check is endorsed, the original payee of the check is called holder. If you have given me, take for example, if Neha gave me a check. Neha gave me a check of 50,000 rupees and she wrote my name. Now I want to transfer it to another person. what I will do is that, take for example, I will write Aishwarya's name and I will put my signature also. I will put my signature also. In that case, what I am doing, I am transferring it by way of endorsement, that I am putting her name and my signature. So I will be the holder. Why? Because I am the original payee. I am the original payee to whom the check was issued. And who is endorsee? The person to whom check is endorsed. That means Aishwarya will become the endorsee in this particular case. And obviously bank to will be there only, who will accordingly make the payment. So this is how we can transfer the check as well in name of someone else by way of endorsement or by way of delivery as well. Now, these are some of the again essentials of check. So these essentials or features, it will just help you understand the types of negotiable instruments that we have. So for check, what we have? Checks are payable on demand only. What will happen if, take for example, you have issued a check to me and it is valid for 3 months. I'm not depositing it within 3 months. What will happen? Who is responsible for it? Who is liable if it is not deposited within that 3 months time frame which is mentioned in case of check?
I think we, ma'am, like in whose name the check has been mentioned.
Who will be responsible?
Check. Ma'am, in whose name the check has been?
Yeah, in whose name the check has been released, that person only will be responsible. So in case, take for example, Neha issued a check in my name. It is my responsibility that I submit this particular check within 3 months time frame when this check is valid. If after 3 months I'm submitting it, it is my responsibility. It is my mistake only. But take for example, in case I have submitted it within 3 months time frame, but it got the check was bounced, then in that case it's not my responsibility, it is the other person's responsibility. Maybe her signature is not matching. Many times banks would call and say that signature is not matching, so we cannot clear this particular check. Then you again need to go to the branch and then again clear the matters. It may happen like that. Sometimes the person may not have sufficient balance in his account. It may get cancelled. Sometimes what may happen is that, take for example, Neha gave me a check of 50,000 rupees. But later on, what happened is that after issuing the check, she realized that the contract or the agreement, whatever was there between us, it was cancelled. I did not provide the service which I promised, or I did not do what I promised to do for 50,000 rupees. What she can do is that she can make a request to the bank that in case this check bearing number so and so is deposited, do not clear it. So accordingly, she can give a direction to the bank, and based on that order or direction, bank will refuse to clear that particular check. But otherwise, what happens? I will have to demand it. I will have to deposit the check, and then accordingly it will be cleared. So checks are payable only on demand. If it is not submitted on time, it will not be cleared by the bank. Even though considered as a type of bills of exchange, checks do not need any form of formal acceptance. So this is bills of exchange, okay? It's just written in a short form. So even though check is considered as a type of bills of exchange, what we do not need is, we do not need formal acceptance. Why? Because I am supposed to make the payment and I am only issuing the check. So there is no need for acceptance, right? I am only doing the thing. Who will accept it then? So in this case, we do not need acceptance. But in case of bills of exchange, we need acceptance because this order is given by the creditor, right? I will give an order to another person who is supposed to pay me a certain amount. So in that case, acceptance will be needed, but otherwise we do not need acceptance because I am only issuing the check. Thirdly, checks may be payable to the paying or to the bearer on demand. So as we have seen in this particular check, right? The option is given that pay, I can write someone's name or it may be to bearer as well. I may just give this check to a certain person. He can go to the bank. He can, maybe bank will ask him to show some ID proof or something and bank will accordingly clear the amount. So it can be bearer check as well. Both will be on demand only. Validity for check is fixed as 3 months time frame. So it will be within 3 months, the person has to deposit the check and accordingly demand for clearing that particular payment which is pending. So these are some of the essentials of check. Who all are parties involved in a check. So there are 3 parties for check and bills of exchange, and there are 2 parties for promissory note. Try to remember the sections. This is like the most common question. Sections 4, 5, 6, promissory note, bills of exchange, and check. So which section defines the term negotiable instrument?
13, ma'am.
Section 13 defines what is a negotiable instrument. So these are some of the essentials. Then we have types of checks. So here we have truncated check also, electronic check also, which are also mentioned under the definition of check. So these are the different types: truncated check, electronic check, order check, bearer check. So in case of truncated check, what happens? It is when physical copy of a check is converted into a digital form. What happens? What is physical copy? If from my checkbook I am writing and I am giving you a check leaf, that is what? That is physical copy of that particular check leaf, right? You have deposited it in the bank. That is physical copy. When you deposit that, like physical copy of the check leaf, it is what? It is a physical copy which you are depositing. But this physical copy is converted into a digital form. How? By scanning. They will scan that particular physical copy of the check and they will convert it into a digital form, right? It will be made a digital copy of that particular check. In that case, it will be called as truncated check. It is, why is it done? It is done as a part of clearance process. So in that case, it will be called as a truncated check. So why is it done? Take for example, A issued a check to B and A is having his account. A is having his account in HDFC Bank and he issued a check to B who is having an account in SBI Bank. Now in this case, what happens? A has given a direction to his HDFC Bank branch that from this account that I am holding, you need to make a payment of 50,000 rupees to B, right? His name will be mentioned and everything. You need to accordingly make a payment of 20,000 rupees. Now, B is having an account in SBI Bank only. So what he will do is that he will take this check and he will deposit it in SBI Bank. He will write his account number and check number and amount and all the details. That page comes, right? He will fill that particular paper and along with the check, he will deposit it in his SBI Bank. Now, account is in HDFC Bank, demand is made in SBI Bank. So both these two banks will have to coordinate, right? SBI will say that so and so check has come to us and we need to clear it from this account which you have in your HDFC Bank. So there will be some sort of communication between these two banks. And to speed up this process, right? They will write some letter or send a copy by post. It will reach them. Sometime it will be cleared. So in order to avoid that delay, what they will do is that they will send a digital copy of that particular check. when the check is deposited in SBI Bank by B, what SBI Bank will do is that they will take a scanned copy of that particular check and they will transfer it to that HDFC Bank and will request clearance of the same. So it is done as a part of clearance process, that when physical copy of a check is converted into a digital form by scanning, in that case it is called as a truncated check. So it is done as a part of clearance process to speed up the entire thing, and accordingly it will be done by them. So is it clear what is truncated check?
Yes, ma'am.
So next we have electronic check. What is electronic check? Electronic check is where the account holder issues issues an e-check, right? Normally we will have that checkbook, and then from there we will fill up one check leaf and then give it to the other person. But how many pages do we have? Hardly like 15, 25, something like that we have, right? Number of pages. For individuals, it's fine. We do not use checks that often. But take, for example, there is a big company, there is some entity, like some big company is there. They would need to make transactions very often, right? So there is something called as e-check also, where some electronic process is used, right? Some electronic device is used, and this entire process will be done electronically only. They will not fill up physical copies of checklists, but everything will be done in an electronic way only. They will use electronic device and they will issue e-checks to the person to whom they need to make the payment, and accordingly transfers the same to the payee over a secure e-check channel. So everything will be done electronically. So it is called as electronic check. It is same way only, but it is just to speed up the process, and also when someone is using it very often, then they can use this particular way. So in those matters also, if there is a dispute, it also will come under NI Act only. That is why this thing is clearly mentioned, that this also will be covered under the definition of check, which we have under section 6 of the NI Act. And he will use his electronic signature only, because everything will be done electronically. He will use electronic signature. He will use some electronic device to fill up the check and to put the details. And then through some secure e-check channel, it will be transferred to the other person, and the other person can accordingly demand clearance of that particular e-check. So that will be called as electronic check. So the main difference between these two is, electronic check is when between the two persons only everything is done electronically, right? The person will fill up in an electronic device. The person will put his e-signature only. Everything will be done electronically between both of them. And truncated check is during clearance process. It may be same banks also, if they have like two different branches. Someone is holding an account in maybe Old Airport Road. Someone else is having his account in maybe Marathali. So what happens is that they also need to coordinate. In that case also, a truncated check may be used as a part of clearance process of the check that is deposited in their bank. So this is from physical copy. They will take a scanned copy of it and will accordingly use it in their clearance process. And here everything is done electronically only. Next is order check. What is order check? From the name itself, it is very like clear and evident. Okay, electronic check, everything is done electronically. Truncated check, you can remember during clearance process, it is just converted into a digital form. What is order check and what is bearer check? So if one check is issued in my name, take for example, my name is written in the check and that check is issued to me, I am the one who will receive the amount. Now take for example, in this particular check, name of Rahul Sharma is written. So who is Rahul Sharma? He is the person who is entitled to get the payment. But I have a right even to negotiate or transfer the check if my name is written, or if Rahul Sharma's name is written. Rahul Sharma has a right to negotiate or to transfer this check to someone else as well. And such negotiation will be done on order of that particular person, and it will be called as an order check. Why? Because Rahul Sharma's name was initially written by the person who is having this account, right? Who is holder of this account. But then Rahul Sharma wants to further negotiate that particular check. He wants to get it transferred to someone else. So what he will do is that he will endorse it. Maybe on the back side of the check, he will write someone's name and put his signature, or maybe he can write someone's name in a blank piece of paper and attach it along with this particular check and accordingly give it. So in that case, what it will be an order check, because this payee has again made an order that rather than paying to me, this amount should go to so and so person whose name I have written, to whom I'm endorsing this particular check. So in that case, it will be an order check. So we have truncated check, we have electronic check, we have order check, and lastly we have bearer check. Again, this is also very clear from the name itself. What is bearer check? When no one's name is written, it will be a bearer check. So here if you see, pay Rahul Sharma, this is optional, you can write or you may leave this blank. If you are leaving this part blank, then pay to whom? To bearer. So in that case, it will be a bearer check. So when no one's name is written, when Rahul Sharma's name is not written over here and this place is left blank, in that case, it will be a bearer check. So this bearer, whoever is holding or like having possession of the check, he can go to the bank and he can accordingly demand payment of that money. That is one example of bearer check. Or even in case a check is negotiated, in that case also it may be a bearer check. How? When name of person is not mentioned in endorsement, it will be a bearer check. Take for example, someone has issued a check in name of Rahul Sharma. His name is written over there. But now Rahul Sharma wants that I don't want to demand this money, but I want this amount to be paid to another person. What he is doing is that he has not written name of the person. He has just put a signature showing that he is endorsing the check. In that case also it will be a bearer check, because Rahul Sharma has transferred the check but without mentioning name of the person. So to whomever he gives that particular check, that person will be the bearer and he can accordingly demand clearance of that particular payment. So these are 4 different types of checks which we have, that you can just remember. Truncated check, when physical copy is converted into a digital form as a part of clearance process. Electronic check, everything will be done electronically, including signature, including transfer, everything. Order check is when someone's name was written, the person further wants to endorse it to someone, it will be an order check. Bearer check is when no one's name is written, or when during endorsement, name of the person is left blank. In both the cases, it will be a bearer check. So check is defined under section 6. It is a type of bills of exchange only, and it is payable only on demand. Even though date is mentioned over here, we know under NI Act it's valid for 3 months, but it is our responsibility to demand for payment or demand for clearance of the amount. It is what? It is an unconditional order. There will be no conditions attached. Whenever the person is claiming for the money by depositing the check, it has to be cleared by the bank. Then signature of the person will be there and it will be paid on demand of the person. There are three parties involved: the bank, the person who is issuing the check, and the other person who will get the payment. In case check is issued, then holder is the original payee, endorser is the person in whose name it is endorsed. Essentials are it is paid always on demand. There is no need, checks do not need any form of acceptance from the person, because this order is given to bank only, not to any individual. Payable to payee or to bearer on demand, and validity is fixed as 3 months for checks. These are the 4 different types of checks which we have. So next we have crossing of checks. Is this part clear? Till types of checks?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. So any one of you also appeared for Bihar Judiciary? Mamta, did you appear for Bihar Judiciary as well?
Ma'am, I just for only Karnataka, ma'am.
Only Karnataka. Okay.
I think Mansi, ma'am. Mansi.
Yeah, Mansi appeared. Few days back on the exam was there, right?
Yes, ma'am. Ma'am, have you got any notification like when our KSLU exam is going to be held?
Karnataka.
Yes, ma'am.
First to like prelims was conducted, right? So I think that will be done, like mains, interview, everything. Then only the new notification will come.
Not that one, ma'am. KSLU.
Okay.
This one, ma'am. Law exam.
No, I don't have any idea regarding that. That is still pending, huh? I thought it's done already.
Ma'am, we have to write 2 SEM and even that backlogs and all.
So college is open or what? Few colleges are open. I heard some
Yes, ma'am,
college-
but they just go doing online classes.
online classes. Okay. In few states, so everything is open, so you cannot really say. It depends on the state actually, what they are doing. Okay, so next thing that we have is crossing of checks. So crossing looks something like this, okay? In the check, so you must have seen this yourself only, that there will be 2 lines like this. Have you seen this thing yourself? Crossing of checks anytime? So crossing looks something like this, that there will be 2 lines drawn like this on the check. So what is crossing and what are the types of crossing we will see? So cross check. If the check is crossed, so if those 2 lines are there in the check, what happens? The payment for the same can be received only in an account and not in counter. What is the difference between this in account and not in counter? Receiving the payment in counter or in account?
Ma'am, in account, I think we will get the money directly from our account, like through passbook or something, ma'am. In counter means we have to go to the counter. Not in counter means not in counter place, ma'am.
Okay. So in counter as in cash, right? So sometimes what happens, maybe like, right, take for example some daily wage earners or someone, okay, like there may be a person who do not have a bank account, or there may be a person who do not want to get the amount transferred in his bank account, right? It may be someone is having rents, right? Someone has a very big house rented, but they do not want to show that income for income tax related matters. What the person may want to do is that he may say that you can pay me the amount by check, but I do not want to get the amount in my account, right? In my bank account, I do not want it. So you cannot put that cross thing over there. Why? Because in that case, the person cannot get the amount in counter. In counter as in the person. For check, what happens usually along with ATM or inside the bank, there will be one like box will be there, right? Where you just need to deposit the check and then you would just leave the bank. And 1 or 2 days later, it will get cleared. Automatically, the amount will be credited in your bank account, right? So that is what that is in an account. That someone has given you a check, you just go to the bank and you deposit or drop your check in that particular check drop box, right? Accordingly, it will be cleared. The amount will be credited in your bank account, whatever you have mentioned in that particular paper. And not in account. In account as if you will go to the bank along with that particular check, and you will not drop it in the check box, but you will stand in the counter, you will give them the check and you will collect the money in cash, right? In the counter itself, you will collect cash from the counter. So that is in counter. When this crossing is put, right, when these two lines are put, amount cannot be taken in counter. It has to go in bank account only. So the person can get the amount only in his bank account. He will have to fill up the details of his bank and then he will have to drop the check. He cannot get it in counter. He cannot collect it there in cash. So crossing of check may be of these types.
Ma'am, who crosses the check? Either the person who draws it or to whom it is given.
Who will issue? If I am issuing you a check, I will only, like put those two lines. And
Okay.
if you do not want to get it deposited in your bank account, you can directly tell me that I don't want that crossing thing, then I will not put.
Okay.
Yeah. So sometimes, take for example, during this, like this COVID situation, right? Everything is closed. Now I was staying in Bangalore. My office is closed, everything is closed. So I moved to my hometown. So what I will do regarding my rent, I will have to pay the rent, right? Now I don't know when I will go back. So I have given checks to the landlord. So what he has said is that he do not want to get it credited in his bank account, maybe because he is not, like showing it for income tax related matters. So he just said that I do not want to get it transferred through any, like Google Pay or bank transfer or anything. You need to give me check only. That too, you cannot put crossing. Why? Because I do not want to get the amount in my bank account. So what we had to do is that we did not put this crossings. We just mentioned his name, the amount, and also it is backdated. As in, it's not important that if you are issuing the check today, you need to mention 12/12/2020 only. You can give something of some, like dates that is yet to come. Now take for example, December 1st, we left Bangalore. Now we need to pay rent for like 6-7 months at least, because we are not going back. So what we have done is that, again, check is valid for 3 months only. What we have done is that we don't need to put date of that particular thing only, right? We have mentioned different dates, like 2021 date also we have mentioned, and we have given that check. That also is valid because you have given the check previously only. When the thing is done, when it happens, accordingly you can do it. So we have even mentioned 2021, some March, April month also. That check also will be valid. In case we want to cancel it, what we can do is that we will have these numbers, right? Check number. We can just ask our banks that if this particular check of this number is given to you, do not clear it. Accordingly, bank will not clear it. So that also is an option. So when this crossing is done, the person can get it only in his bank account. So many times you would see person will say that I don't want cross check. So you don't put crossing, you just mention name of the person, and accordingly you give the check to the person and he will get the amount in account cash. Now one question is asked, okay, most of the times, how many types of crossings are there? Here we are going to study 3 but you need to answer as 2 types of crossings only are there. When you read this thing, then you will understand why there are 2 types and not 3 types. Just remember there are 2 types of crossings under Negotiable Instruments Act. It is under section 123 and 124. This is also very common question. Try to remember there are 2 types of crossings. Section 123 crossed generally, 124 crossed specially. And what is crossing? When you can get the amount only in your bank account. This thing you try to remember. It's very important. Most of the times questions are being asked from this part. Okay. Now there are these types of crossings. What are these types? First is checks crossed generally. What is crossed generally? Check will be crossed and inside the lines name of the company may be written. Then the amount may be taken in the bank account of that company only and not in the counter. When there is this crossing, person's name will be written. Or sometimes what they do is that they will write Rahul Sharma, here they may write payee. That means to this person's bank account only the amount has to go. He cannot collect it in, like standing in the counter. It will get transferred in his bank account only. So I may write Rahul Sharma over here and then he can get the amount only in his bank account. So Rahul Sharma has to have a bank account. It does not matter in which bank. If my account is in HDFC Bank and Rahul Sharma is having an account in SBI Bank, that is also fine, right? It has to be some bank account. It does not matter which bank. Banks will accordingly coordinate and get it transferred. So checks crossed generally is when name of the person, name of the company or name of an entity is written, right? Who is having a bank account. It may be a trust, it may be a college, it may be a temple, it may be an NGO, whatsoever it is, who is holding an account and that entity or individual's name is written and that person or entity can collect the amount in their bank account only, which is held by the person or entity. So this is crossed generally. It is under section 123. What is crossed specially? Second type is checks crossed specially. It is under section 124. What is crossed specially? When a check is crossed and inside the lines name of a bank like SBI, HDFC is written, it is called checks crossed specially. The amount from that check can be taken only in an account of that bank. In case of generally, what we are doing, we are writing name of a person or an entity. So any bank, right? It does not matter which bank, any bank, that person or entity has to have an account and that person can accordingly get the amount transferred in their bank. When it is crossed specially, what happens? Inside these 2 lines, in case it is crossed specially, inside these 2 lines, we will write name of a certain bank. If I'm writing ICICI Bank, you need to have an account in ICICI Bank, then only you can clear that particular amount, then only you can get the amount. So whatever bank's name I have written in that particular bank only, it will be cleared. So these are the 2 differences, okay, that it is cross generally under section 123, cross specially under 124. Try, you don't need any sort of technicalities or anything. You just need to remember the sections and the types. 2 types, generally and specially. Generally is 124, specially is 120. Generally is 123, specially is 124. Generally is name is written in any bank of that person or entity, they can clear the amount. Specially is in that specific bank only, the person need to have an account. Third is,
Ma'am?
Yeah.
Ma'am, what about the trust? If we want to deposit the money to the trust, then that will be generally, ma'am.
See, Name as in it can be a company, it can be trust, NGO, company, whatsoever is having an account, right? You would see even temples also having bank accounts, right? So that also will be considered. Companies having bank account, institutes having bank account. So like that, it will be generally. If you want to mention a trust name, it will be generally, especially as only when bank's name is mentioned. Otherwise, it will be generally when you are mentioning company's name or, like trust name or something like that.
Ma'am, is it compulsory to write the name inside the crossed lines?
No, it is otherwise not necessary. If you want, then you can write. Sometimes the person may also request, or sometimes the person may say that I don't want. Accordingly, based on the two persons who are transacting, they can decide. Sometimes you want to make a payment. Take, for example, you want to pay your tuition fees, right? Maybe UDX is having their own bank account, so you can just write their name, like like over here, right? It's not necessary that you would put crossing. You can just write their name, that this is the institute to whom we want to make the payment. You can mention the payment, accordingly you can deposit. It depends on you and the other person who is at the receiving end, the payee. Whatever you both agree, accordingly you can do.
What is the main agenda of crossing, ma'am? The two lines.
Main agenda of cross, yeah, maybe the person just wants that this particular person only has, like maybe take for example some companies and all, while they are paying salaries, where they have their current account. Like take for example many private companies, you would see they are having their current account in HDFC Bank. They want their employees also to have their accounts in HDFC Bank. In that case, they may put that, okay, fine, in HDFC Bank only it has to go. There may be multiple reasons also. Or if they want that this particular person only has to like have an account, sometimes you will see before issuing a check, the person will ask you also, do you have an account? Write your proper name, whatever you have like in your thing, because you cannot clear it otherwise, right? If take for example I'm issuing a check in your name, Mamta, and spelling is written incorrectly, you cannot clear it. So accordingly I can write your name also, that you cannot like deposit, clear it in someone else's name. Now take for example you are working with a certain company, or you are working with a certain institute. That particular institute wants that amount should go in your name only. Now take for example you are an employee of ABC company, ABC institute, and you would get 20,000 rupees. You have provided some sort of a service, you would get 20,000 of rupees. What they have done is that they have issued a check of 20,000 rupees. Now, if they have not mentioned your name, you just said that you don't have an account, you want to get the amount credited in your brother's account. Later on, you may come and say that, see, I have not got the amount. If it is in your name, they can just clearly show you, right? That, okay, fine, see, your name is written, this much amount got, like debited from our account. There may be multiple reasons why they do this thing, like crossing thing regarding banks also, regarding name of the persons also. Or maybe take, for example, you are an employee of a certain company, then you are having some other source of income. Maybe you are teaching dance somewhere, singing somewhere, you are earning some extra income. Maybe those institutes want that you properly reflect that in your income tax like matters. You do not hide those extra incomes which you have. In that case also, they might say that we want you to like get the amount in your bank account only. You cannot get it in your brother's account, who is maybe a student who is not earning enough to pay income tax. So you cannot hide that extra income which you are having. So we want you to get it in your bank account only. There may be multiple reasons between the two persons who are making the payment and who is at the receiving end, while like they would put crossing.
Ma'am, I just thought like, that crossing has been done, like that bank will see whether the person has received the amount or not. I thought like that, ma'am, like just to get a clarification whether the check has been
Okay.
issued, like that and all.
Okay. Like bank too will have an like details only, because when you are dropping your check, you only will mention name of your bank details and all of that. So bank, that details they will have only. If tomorrow you are going and claiming that what is the like what amount has been credited to me, they will give you details that this check was credited to you, this is the number from this bank it is coming, they will have the details. If you are issuing a check and you are asking to whom it got credited, those details also they will have. So this is mainly based on the two persons who are involved in that particular transactions. Bank anyways will have the details, whether you are putting crossing, not crossing, whatsoever, they will have all the details that you will see. Even in your passbook also, I think something comes, right? Name of the like company or name of the entity from where you have received. If it's some check, that like details also comes, like number and all, something used to come, I saw. Name of the company, and then the check number also would come, so that you can accordingly have reference to that. So in case the question comes, how many types of checks are there? Two types, generally and specially. Now we will see why we have a third type of check as well. Crossing as well. So it is check bearing not negotiable. Now this is also, yeah.
Types of check is 4, right, ma'am?
Types of check is 4. This is crossing. Regarding crossing, there are two types of crossing, generally and specially. Yeah. And also this is something which we write inside the crossing thing only, but it is not considered as a, like different type of crossing. So regarding crossing, we have two types, generally and specially. We will see what is not negotiable. So check bearing not negotiable. It is mentioned under section 130 of the NI Act. So in this case also, what we will do is that in case it is generally, I will write Rahul Sharma. In case it is specially, I will write HDFC Bank, SBI Bank, or some other bank. If it is not negotiable, what I will do is that I will put two lines like this and I will write not negotiable. Now what happens in case I put not negotiable? So negotiable, by now we know, right? It means transferable, transferring to someone else. So what does not negotiable mean? Does this mean that we cannot transfer it, or what is it? We will see. It is under section 130. Try to remember this section as well. It's also important. So we are discussing only the important sections. So whatever I'm discussing in class, try to remember these sections. Like very few sections are there, but these are like very important sections. So section 130 is with regard to not negotiable. So what is not negotiable? A person taking a check cross generally or specially. So it may either be generally or specially. This is why we are not considering it as a third type of crossing. We have only two different types of crossings, and in either of these, we may have this word written not negotiable. So not negotiable is not a different type, but it can be included in generally or in specially. What is it? A person taking a check cross generally or specially, bearing in either case. It can be in case of generally also, it can be in specially also. What it will have? Bearing the words not negotiable. Not negotiable. That means it can be a check which is crossed generally or specially. I may write Rahul Sharma and then I may write not negotiable. I may write SBI, then I may write not negotiable. So it can be either generally or specially, and along with that I have written the words not negotiable. What happens? Shall not have and shall not be capable of giving a better title to the check than that which the person from whom he took it had. Now what is title? What is title? Anyone? What is title?
Name, ma'am?
Title is like ownership only, like in property matters, CPC and all, we say, right? Title to a property. What do we say? Like, like I have title over that property. I have a proper title, as in I am the proper owner of that particular property. There is no case and all pending, right? So that same thing only title would mean here. What is title? Title would mean ownership, right? Title to a check. Title to the check. That would mean ownership. If I have a check, I have title over that particular check. If you issue a check to me, I have title over that particular check. I am the owner and the possessor of that particular check, and I can accordingly demand payment based on that particular check. Now, not negotiable is used just in order with relation to title. I will just give you an example and you will understand what not negotiable is. Take for example, a Neha gave me a check of 20,000 rupees for some kind of a service. Which I have done. She gave me a check. Now I have 3 months time. Within that 3 months time, I can either demand the payment or I can negotiate it. I can give it to someone else. Now what happened? I also had to pay 20,000 rupees to Aishwarya. So what I did is that rather than depositing the check and demanding the money, I wrote Aishwarya's name and I mentioned 20,000 rupees. 20,000 rupees. 20,000 already was mentioned. I just wrote her name and I endorsed that particular check accordingly. Now, later on, what happens is that Neha gave me this check for some sort of a service, which I did not do that I was supposed to do. Okay, I promised that I will do the service for you, and she accordingly gave me the check. But later on, I did not do what I promised. So now what she wants is that she wants to cancel out this particular check. This 20,000 rupees check which she issued, she wants to cancel out this particular check because I did not perform this service which I promised. So what she can do is that she can cancel out this particular check. Now, Aishwarya is not aware about anything. She just goes to the bank and she deposits this particular check and it gets bounced, right? Why? Because Neha has already directed the bank that in case this check is deposited, do not clear it. So when Aishwarya submits this check, it will be bounced. Now, Aishwarya cannot file a case against Neha for check bounce, but she will have to claim the money from me. She will have to file a case against me that I am supposed to pay her 20,000 rupees. So basically this not negotiable is used just in order to avoid some, like legal complications. Take for example, Neha is issuing a check of 20,000 rupees to me. She will want to avoid any sort of unnecessary legal complications because maybe she is running a company. She is involved in multiple transactions every single day. So she would not want to take unnecessary headache of dealing with Aishwarya. Why? Because she do not even know her. She has not even transacted with her, right? So in order to avoid all these further transactions, this not negotiable is used. Not negotiable basic, it does not mean I cannot transfer. I can transfer, but I am the only one who is having a better title. In case the check is like bounced or something, I can file a case against the person. Second, third, fourth person to whom I am endorsing it, those persons cannot file a case against her. So it is just in order to avoid unnecessary cases or unnecessary legal complications. So what this means? If it is bearing not negotiable, shall not have. What does it mean? It means So in case it is bearing not negotiable, then what it means is that it can still be transferred. It can still be transferred, but shall not be capable of giving a better title to the check. That means I am not capable of giving a better title to this check to Aishwarya than what I have. I have a better title than Aishwarya because this check was originally given to me. I can file a case against Neha, but Aishwarya or someone else, whoever are there, those persons cannot file a case against Neha. So this is just in order to avoid unnecessary legal complications, that if I am issuing a check to you, you are the only person to whom I am answerable. I am not answerable to all the other third parties to whom you may endorse the check. So this is just in order to avoid that thing only. So here title would mean ownership or like authority over the check. I have better title. The first person to whom it is originally issued, that person has a better title, and he is not capable of giving a better title to the other person to whom the check is endorsed. So this is done just in order to avoid unnecessary legal complications that they will mention not negotiable. This will be applicable mostly in case of big companies or entities where they would deal with multiple like individuals, multiple entities. Daily they may be issuing hundreds of checks. They do not want that all these other third parties who are not even related to them would come and would be filing cases. They would need to go to the court, appear before court. Those things are not needed, right? Unnecessary. So they would just write not negotiable, and someone cannot like file a case against them to whom they are not even related. So these are the two different types of crossings. Generally and specially, in either of these, persons can write not negotiable in that particular check. So is this part clear regarding crossing? Mainly sections are what you need, and the types. So types are two: generally, specially. Generally is name of the person or entity. Specially is name of the bank will be written. Sections are 123, 124, and 130. Is this part clear?
Yes.
So here are some of the differences between bills of exchange and check. So we know that check is a type of bills of exchange only, but again for check, we have a different section under NIA. So what are the main differences? First is bills of exchange is under section 5, check is under section 6. In bills of exchange, we need acceptance as it is made by the creditor. I am ordering someone else to make a payment. So that other person will have to give acceptance. So in case of bills of exchange, we need acceptance. But in case of check, we do not need acceptance and it is paid on demand. I am only issuing the check regarding some payment which I only need to make. So there is no question of accepting or anything. I will just issue the check and it will be paid whenever the other person demands for payment. In case of bills of exchange, it contains an order to pay. Checks are payable only on demand. It may be an order to pay. I may just write that on 12th of December 2020, pay me 50,000 rupees. Accordingly, it needs to be paid. But in case of check, it will be only on demand. Unless and until I am demanding, it will not be paid. It does not matter that there is a validity fixed, date is mentioned or anything like that. It does not matter. It has to be demanded, then only it will be paid by the bank. Bills of exchange are payable on the date specified. I may write a date. I may say after 30 days from this particular date. So whenever 30 days time frame is completed from the time when this bills of exchange was made, it has to be paid. Or I may say that may be paid on demand if date is not specified. I may write a bills of exchange, but I may just leave the space for date blank. I have not mentioned any date. So in that case, whenever I am presenting that bills of exchange to the person, it has to be cleared then and there only. So it can be payable on the specified date. If date is not specified, then it has to be paid whenever it is demanded. In case of check, what happens? It is payable only on demand, that too within 3 months time frame only. So after 3 months, we cannot make we cannot claim for the payment also. There was some case also regarding, in contracts only there is one case. What happens is that one person promised to make a payment. Okay, one person promised that I will pay 500 rupees for some reparation work, and he accordingly issued a check also. But to whom check was issued, that person failed to deposit it in the bank within that time frame fixed. Later on, the person also died who promised to make the payment. So he filed a case against the legal heirs of that person. So legal heirs said that we are not responsible because it was your fault only that you did not clear, like demand for the payment within the validity period. So it has to be demanded within this 3 months time frame. If we are not demanding, it is our fault only, not the other person's fault. Next is bills of exchange carry a grace period of 3 days for payment of the money. In case of bills of exchange, when date is mentioned, if I'm writing 12th December 2020, 3 days of grace period is also added. So it will become 15th will become 15th of December. But in case of check, there is no concept of grace period. If it is 3 months, it will be 3 months only. But there is one provision where what happens, in case last day of maturity is a public holiday, then in that case it is considered that check will mature on the next day. If it is Sunday or some public holiday where bank is closed, in that case 1 day will be extended. If it will be expiring on 13th of December, it will be considered that it will expire on 14th of December, Monday. So accordingly, it will be done. In case of bills of exchange, it cannot be paid to bearer. I cannot, like fill up a bill of exchange without mentioning anyone's name. That whoever is carrying this bills of exchange, you pay it to that person only. Their name will be mentioned, but in case of check, it will be payable. It may be payable to bearer also. I may write someone's name, or I may even leave that particular space blank. Whoever is carrying it, that person only can demand for payment. So these are some of the differences between bills of exchange and check. So are these 3 types of negotiable instruments clear? Any doubts on the types that we have? 3 different types.
Ma'am, can we discuss the doubts I had regarding specific relief?
Yeah, we will discuss that also. Okay. So fine, then these are the 3 different types, bills of exchange, promissory note, bills of exchange, and check. Then we also have some other provisions regarding check. Okay, so these are, we will discuss some of these today, then we will continue. So first is date of maturity of negotiable instruments. So it is section 22. These are like few sections only I have mentioned, okay, in this particular sheet. Try to remember these sections. Only the important ones are there, like this also. Regarding date of maturity, which section is talking about, right? It is section 22. So the maturity of promissory note or bills of exchange is the date at which it falls due. If I'm mentioning a date, then that will be the date of maturity, and there will be what days of grace also, which will be applicable for promissory note and bills of exchange which is not expressed to be payable on demand. If I have left that space for date blank, right? I have just issued a bills of exchange or promissory note saying that pay 50,000 rupees to me or to so and so person. No date is mentioned. That means it is on demand or at site or on presentation. On demand as in whenever I am demanding. At site as in you are somewhere, I am going to you, and at site I am presenting the bills of exchange or promissory note. You need to make the payment accordingly. Or it may be on presentment. I am presenting that particular bills of exchange or promissory note to you. You need to make the payment. So in that case, whenever it is demanded, that is maturity. Or otherwise, there will be a 3 days of grace period which will be applicable. So on the third day, after the day on which it is expressed to be payable, it will mature. So if I'm mentioning 12th of December, on 12th of December 2020, you need to make a payment of 50,000 rupees. Then what happens in that case, it will become 15th of December. If I have not mentioned any date, then in that case, whenever it is presented, whenever it is demanded, it has to be paid or it has to be cleared accordingly. So this is section 22 that talks about date of maturity of negotiable instruments. You may be asked how many days of grace period is allowed. It is 3 days of grace period which is allowed for promissory note and bills of exchange. For check, we do not have any concept of grace period, but only if it is a public holiday when the check is maturing, 1 extra day will be added. So this is section 25. This also is important when date of maturity is a holiday. So when the day on which a promissory note or bills of exchange is at maturity is a public holiday, the instrument shall be deemed to be due on the next proceeding or business day. The expression public holiday would even include Sundays as well, or any other holidays that may be notified. Like for banks and all, you would see notifications also that these are the public holidays for banks. Every single year they would release, it's even available on their website. So those days, if it is falling, that will be applicable. So this is section 25 regarding holiday. Then this section 18 and 19, 2 things are also there that you can remember. Section 18 is where amount is stated differently in figures and in words. So there are 2 options, right? Rupees, you need to write that, okay, fine, 50,000. In words you will write. Over here you will write in numbers. Now sometimes what happens, maybe someone's handwriting may not be very clear. It may not be very clear whether the person has written 4 or the person has written 9. So we may not be sure whether it's 40,000 or it's 90,000. In case it is different, words and numbers whatsoever is written, both are different. Take for example, in words they have written 40,000, in numbers it is written as 90,000. So in that case, what will happen? Which one will be considered? It is mentioned under section 18. So if it is different, then the amount stated in words shall be the amount undertaken or ordered to be paid. We will consider whatever is written in words. Because what happens if someone has written 40,000, right? In words, there is lesser chance of mistake, but 4 may look like 9 also for some person. So we would not consider the one which is written in numbers, but whatever is written in words, we would consider that amount, and that amount only will be released. In case it is different, numbers and words are different for that particular check. It is section 18. And section 19 is instruments payable on demand. A promissory note or bills of exchange in which no time for payment is specified and a check are payable on demand. So check is always payable on demand. Unless and until you are demanding, it will not be cleared, even though time is fixed, 3 months validity is fixed and all of that, it will not be paid. So check is always on demand. But in case of bills of exchange and promissory note, only when time is not specified, only when I have not written a specific date, it will be on demand. Otherwise, it will be cleared on that particular date itself. So these are just some random sections which I saw questions being asked. Any doubts on this particular part? 22, 25, 18, and 19. Is this part clear? Okay. So see, now again we have certain other provisions with regard to negotiation and all, where we will discuss in detail what are the different types of negotiation and how it is done and all of that. So we will continue with that in the next class. If you have any doubts on this part, you can tell, we can discuss that. Different types of negotiable instruments that we saw. Also, some questions are there that we can discuss in next class. Okay, fine. Then, so if this part is clear, we will. So Neha was having some doubts regarding specific relief act. So we will see that. Okay, so first was regarding section 34. So section 34, Specific Relief Act. It was with regard to declaratory decrees. So what were declaratory decrees? Anyone remembers what is declaratory decree? Why is it issued?
Ma'am, when there is any doubt regarding the legal character of a person or title to the property, he can apply to the court for seeking a declaration and clearing that doubt. So that is when a declaratory decree is passed, and it is upon the discretion of the court. So that part I got, ma'am, but this proviso.
Explanation. Yeah. So what is declaratory decree? It is at the discretion of court that court can declare something. What court will declare? It will declare a legal character or any right of a person. I am owner of a property. I have a right with regard to the property. That may be declared. Or it may be legal character, that I am resident of a certain state, I am daughter of a certain person, I am wife of a certain person, whatsoever it may be. So it is at discretion. And what is this explanation given? Provided or the explanation part, right?
Ma'am, the proviso, provided.
Proviso, okay. So provided that no court shall make any such declaration where the plaintiff, being able to seek further relief than a mere declaration to title, omits to do so. Now, in some other cases also, I think in like specific performance of contract and all, also we have seen that whatsoever we can claim in that one case only, everything has to be done. We cannot just say that, okay, fine, the person promised to sell this property to me, so you get the sell done. Court will say that no, you do not stop just at getting the property transferred on papers, but you can also ask, or you should also ask for actual possession or handing over possession to you. So whatsoever can be done, right? Everything has to be cleared in one single case only, just to ensure that persons are not coming back again and again. Same thing would apply here also. What is declaratory decree? Court is just declaring that, okay, fine, you are owner of this particular property. But that may not be enough, right? Court is just declaring, but that is not enough. That is not solving the purpose. If you look at the case or look at the facts of the case, maybe the person was capable to seek a further relief than just a declaration. So in that case, court should not just give the declaration. Court would not give the declaration, but court may ask the person that rather than asking for declaration, you make changes in your plaint and you ask for this particular relief. We would give that as well. Now take for example, court may say, where is this? Take for example, court may say, one person is there, A, who is owner of a land. But what happens is that people started using his land, okay, using his land like a like a road. They started using a certain portion of his land and they started using it like a road to go to this other part of the road. So what happens? A, being owner of this land, he goes to court. A goes to court and says that, declare that I am owner of the land. Declare that I am owner of this land. Now in this case, court may feel that, okay, fine, we can declare that you are owner of this particular land and this is not a road, this is your private property. But will that serve the purpose? Because it's like normal public, right? Almost everyone is using his private land like a road. So maybe in this case, declaratory decree is not the best relief that the person should be given. So court may say that rather than asking for declaratory decree, what you can do is that you can ask for maybe an injunction order. Maybe an injunction order, right? So what court will do is that court will not provide. So provided that no court shall make any such declaration, court will not provide such declaration where the plaintiff, where A, being able to seek further relief, A was able to seek an injunction order, but what he did is that he just sought a declaration of title and he omitted to ask for injunction order. So in that case, court will say that declaratory decree may not be the best relief for you. Rather than asking for it, you make changes in your plaint and accordingly you ask for maybe an injunction order, or maybe some injunction order would be only the best thing here, but whatever the case may be, right? So court may ask accordingly. Or it may be some sort of take for example, it may be there is a contract between two persons, A and B. A is a person who is willing to breach the contract. He is refusing that you have a right to demand performance of the contract. In that case, A is going to court and saying that you declare that I am the rightful party of this particular contract and I have a right to enforce this contract. Court may say that rather than this declaratory decree, you seek actual performance of the contract so that tomorrow again you are not coming back to us. So in that case also court may say that we are not providing declaratory decree, but rather you make changes and you ask for specific performance of the contract because we can make the person perform his part. So we can accordingly do that. So wherever it's possible, our court feels that person is entitled to seek some sort of other relief, court would not just grant a declaratory decree which might not be of any use in that particular case.
So, ma'am, there was this question asked relating to this proviso only. It was said that the proviso to section 34, does it relate to declaration or does it relate to injunction? So that is where I got confused.
Yeah. So here declaration would not be, like given injunction or specific performance whatsoever might be the case.
So proviso is related to any other relief that can be granted.
Yeah.
Okay.
So is judiciary paper only, or where did you get the question?
Ma'am, on the UDX app, we had a test on specific relief. So when I was answering, I made a mistake here. So.
Okay. And regarding section 6, you said whether court can, like give an order for
Yes,
possession
ma'am.
of immovable property or not.
Can the court adjudicate on the title, ma'am? Because over here, the plaintiff who's filing the case is a person who's wrongfully dispossessed. So, can the court adjudicate on the title as who's the rightful owner of the property? Does the court have that power to adjudicate on the title?
Okay, on the title. See,
Yes.
yeah, see, for section 6, right, it is what? Suit by a person dispossessed of immovable property. If a person dispossessed with an immovable property, otherwise, of specific movable property. One second, I'll just open the sheet. Okay, so it was section 6 of the Specific Relief Act. So regarding possession of immovable property, person having title or ownership, person having possession. Now see, in this particular case, what happens is that person is not owner, but he is having rightful possession of the property. So it's not like the person is like the court is deciding on ownership. Maybe take for example, A is owner of a certain property. A is owner of a certain property and B is a tenant. Okay, B is a tenant. Now B is what? He is not the owner, but he is rightful possessor of the property, maybe for 11 months. Maybe for 11 months. So in this case, he is removed from this possession during this 11 months time. So we are not talking about who is the owner. Obviously, owner is A only, but B is removed without any lawful justification from this particular property. So B is filing a case having possession. So he is filing a case with regard to his right. So in this case, court may look into the, like agreement between them and look into the matter between them. So suit by person dispossessed of immovable property. Court may again say that there was a valid contract between you with regard to rent or maybe with regard to lease or whatsoever the case may be, and court may say that based on this particular valid contract, he is a rightful possessor of this property and he has every right to stay in this property until completion of this 11 months, 6 months or whatsoever case may be. So accordingly, for that particular specified time, court would give possession to this particular person, because anyways he is not the owner. So we are not deciding on ownership, but for that particular time frame, whether he has a right to stay in that property or use that property or like be in possession of that property or not. So regarding that, yeah.
So, ma'am, then does it mean that over here, when the tenant brings up the case that he was wrongfully dispossessed, then the owner over here cannot take the defense of having the ownership of the property, right? So he is not entitled to the defense of title over here.
He see, it's like subjective again. It depends for what reason. Now take for example, there is one person, okay, he is owner of a certain property and he has rented out that particular property. Now if maybe that property was just next to a national highway, now National Highway Authority wants to widen the highway, so they want to acquire some portion of that particular house, and accordingly the owner is asking that you need to vacate the house because National Highway Authority is going to acquire my house. I need to break my house accordingly. In that case, the owner cannot, like in that case, the tenant cannot be like, I have 11 months agreement, I have a right to stay, I will stay no matter what. In that case, the court will say that no, you don't have that right, because highway authority is following the proper like guidelines and they are doing it. In that case, court would not provide. But in another case, if the owner is going and owner is saying that no, there is a valid contract, but I got some other tenant who is paying me twice the amount that I am getting from this person, so I want to cancel out this order. So in that case, court would not hear. So it's very subjective. It depends on the situation basically. Court would see, so only you would see for all these cases, it's discretion of court, right? That if a person just goes and he says that I'm the owner, I will decide, court would not take into consideration that thing. Like, no, the basic aim of this entire specific relief act is that no one should get like any sort of, nothing should be unfair, everyone should get justice. That is the main reason. So it's very subjective, depending on the situation, only court would decide. So here you would not see the court should provide this order, the court should do like this. It's always discretion of court only.
Okay, ma'am.
What was the case relating to this section 6? Or
Over
you
here,
just...
ma'am, the question exactly was that in section 6, can the defendant take up the plea of title? And the second question was, can the court adjudicate on the title in section 6? So these were two questions coming from section 6. So then I made mistakes on those two questions.
Okay, so what was the correct option from there, like the options which we...
Ma'am, they didn't provide the answers. I just submitted the question paper and then I got the result. So I didn't get to know what is the correct answer.
Okay. Yeah, so regarding defense and all, it's not like the owner would just come and say, I'm the owner. Like, just like how I gave two examples, right? In one case, even if you are owner, even if you are a rightful tenant, the court might say that no, it's a right decision only taken by the owner. In another case, again, court may say that even though you are an owner, you need to follow the contract that you have entered into. So subjective thing only. Yeah. Okay, so fine then. So few parts are remaining from the Negotiable Instruments Act regarding check and all. So check is like a big thing which we have, like many sections are there. So we will continue with that in the next class, okay? The remaining portions. And also the questions we will see. Okay. So fine then, I'm ending this class here, okay? Thank you.